Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And we're up to Symphony number 69, and this one has a nickname, Laudon. Well, what is a Laudon? Well, Laudon was a general. He was an Austrian general who supposedly defeated the Turks. Well, he did defeat the Turks, and made Europe safe for the Austrian monarchy. Isn't that terrific? Anyway, he was a famous guy. The title had Haydn's sanction, although he didn't think of it when writing the symphony. What happened was Haydn's publisher asked him to do a keyboard arrangement of this work because it was quite popular and he thought it would sell well. And the publisher said, let's name it after General Laudon because it will be really good for sales. And Haydn agreed. He said, yeah, stick his name on it. It's going to be really terrific for sales. And it is a militant piece. It has trumpets and timpani and lots of military fanfares. And it's a proud piece of music. It has grandeur in it. And it's very, aside from the military part of it, though, it's actually a delicious symphony. It's full of graceful tunes, and it's very singable and lovely. It's not one of Haydn's quirkier or more experimental pieces, which doesn't mean it's less important or less interesting. I mean, there's nothing wrong with writing a blockbuster success. Although in the classical music world, everyone holds it against him. You're not going to believe what the Haydn Stiftung, whatever the hell they are, and wherever they are in Germany, in their discussion of all these symphonies, they just trash this piece because they think Haydn was courting cheap popularity or he was busy with other things and he didn't have time to do it. And it's so ridiculous. In fact, the history of this work belies that completely, because when Haydn made the piano arrangement for his publisher, he refused to make an arrangement of the finale because he said the finale wasn't appropriate for performance on the piano. And it's not. You'll listen to it, you'll see. It's a very densely orchestral piece with all kinds of orchestral sound effects like string tremolos and things that they don't translate to the keyboard. And Haydn was sensitive to that. So if he cared that much, then it couldn't be that he just dashed the thing off and never gave a damn about it. It's just the thought process in the world of classical music and musicology particularly, because if it doesn't have something extremely complicated or bizarre, then it can't possibly be important because it's all judged by how well it foreshadows things that happened hundreds of years later rather than how well it simply does what it wants to do, how well it is what it is. And this is a beautifully realized, short, peppy, very compressed, and just lovely symphony. I mean, you feel so good after you hear it. There's no reason it shouldn't be as popular now as it was in Haydn's day, at least potentially, because the music has that quality of easy accessibility. And there's nothing wrong with that. You stupid classical music snob people, just stop it. When something is joyous and accommodating and friendly and warm and appealing, can't you just take it and enjoy it? I guess they can. All right, so we don't have to worry about them. We worry about us. And this particular symphony begins with a tune which is somewhat similar to the Maria Theresa Symphony, number 48, just for the first couple bars. Then it goes off on its own way, and it's totally different. There are two factors that unify this symphony together. And they are, as usually with Haydn, there's like a couple of things, 2 or 3 things he picks that the movements will share that will, create a cohesive impression. And they are the fact that there are trumpets and drums, which occur in 3 movements, and which was rather unusual for the period. And because trumpets and drums were so limited in what they could do, the timpani only had 2 notes, tonic and dominant, and they played fanfares, usually with the trumpets, bump, ba-da-dum, bump, bump, that sort of thing. And the trumpets could only play a few notes in their middle range, in the register that Haydn wanted to use. You have to remember, people sometimes are puzzled because if you listen to like Bach's Second Brandenburg Concerto or some of these Baroque trumpet concertos where they're all going, these incredibly virtuosic, screamingly high trumpet parts. Well, That tradition of playing it basically died out by the time Haydn was writing, except perhaps in certain church music pieces that got revived. But basically, that wasn't what they were doing. The reason that wasn't what people were doing was because the only way you could play that way, first of all, you had to be specially trained to do it. And second of all, only if the trumpet was a solo instrument. Or at the beginning of the Gloria of Bach's B minor Mass, where they're going, you could do it, but it had to be at the extreme, piercingly high end of the trumpet's register, where you had enough notes that were in tune and close enough together that you could get an actual scale in the key in which you were writing, which was always C major or D major, usually. And so if you didn't want your trumpets to be a solo instrument all the time, as Haydn didn't, then you were going to have to limit yourself to an accompanying role and just the few good notes that you could get. And as a result of that, Haydn makes a virtue of that in two ways. The first way, as I said, was just the fact that the trumpets and drums exist in three movements, and that is a unifying timbral factor. The other thing is that what trumpets and timpani did were basically fanfares. And Haydn had a very particular rhythm, the Haydn rhythm, which was also the same as the Mahler rhythm, by the way. It's bum-ba-da-dum-bum-bum. You'll hear it constantly. Mozart's was different. Mozart's was bum, bum, ba-bum, bum. That was Mozart's. So it's actually very interesting. Mozart was dum, bum, ba-bum, like this. Haydn was dum-ba-da-dum-bum-bum. And that dum-ba-da-dum-bum-bum ends, as you may have noticed, with three notes. Dun, da, da, dun, 2, 3, like that. Well, those three notes are the other unifying factor of the symphony. Or little groups of three notes or two notes, jump, 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 at the end of the exposition of the first movement, but mostly three notes. And these three notes can occur at the end of a tune, at the middle of a tune, at the beginning of a tune, or in the trumpet and drum parts as accompaniments for doing the dum-ba-da-dum-bum-bum rhythm. And so that's what you're going to hear constantly throughout this symphony. And Haydn makes that a unifying principle. I mean, it's making a virtue out of a necessity, you might want to say. So every time the trumpets and drums come in and they play that rhythm, which they do quite frequently, you think, aha, that's the three notes. But he does more than that because he makes something very melodic out of them. And I'm going to play that for you so you get the hang of it right away. For example, the second subject of the first movement ends with those three notes, three repeated notes. Ya, ya, da, 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 do, 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 dum, bum, bum. Very pretty. It's a very pretty tune. So whenever you hear yum bum bum, you're going to hear, those are the three notes. And it makes for a symphony that's extremely cohesive. And the irony of it, of course, is that these other people are like, crapping all over this piece because they think it's Haydn being lazy. It's one of the most unified and organic pieces he ever wrote. You just don't think about it because it's all just so lively and refreshing and comfortable. It's all subliminal, the way it works. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it works as we go, and we're going to just enjoy it and relax the way Haydn wanted us to. So I'm going to play this first example is also a case study in another factor, which is Haydn's handling of form, especially the form of the recapitulation. Because as we've talked about in sonata form movements, you have two main subjects, right? A first theme or a second theme, or a first subject and a second subject. Because a subject isn't just a tune. It could be an idea, it could be a tune plus an idea, it could have one element, one long melody, it could have 20 different little things, it could be anything. All right, and between them there is motion music, music that gets us to the next theme. And the nature of that motion music in Haydn is a wonderful thing. One of the fascinating things about Haydn is that people tend to concentrate in sonata movements on the first subject and the second subject, but with Haydn the interest is often in the motion music. But here, he wants to get you from point A to point B very directly and very quickly. In some of the previous symphonies, as we've heard, there were like digressions and, slight detours into odd keys on the way. And by the time you got to the second subject, you felt, wow, we've really had a journey. That's not what he's doing here at all. Here, he's keeping everything rather close together. It's like going to your neighbor's house rather than to another city. The journey is not a long one in this particular case. And, it's perfectly fine to do it that way. But the interesting thing is that when he gets to the recapitulation, the restatement, usually what Haydn does, because everything is going to stay in or around the main key, is he cuts out a lot of the motion music because you're not going to need it. You're not going anywhere. Everything is staying close to home. And you really hear that here. It's kind of amazing. The exposition in this symphony is about 1 minute and 10 seconds long. In the recapitulation, it's about 30 seconds. The whole thing. I mean, you get a little bit of the opening, then boom, he cuts right to that second subject. I mean, it just pops right in and then wraps up the movement. So it's a very, very compressed movement. And we're going to, what we're going to listen to is the opening, the full exposition, and then there's a little pause at the end of it, and we go straight to the recapitulation and the end of the movement. I let it play till the end of the movement. There's a 10 or 15 second wind up, but I want you to hear just how compressed it is, how Haydn is able to join together the first and second subjects in that recapitulation. It's really kind of remarkable, and it gives us a sense of what to listen for in Haydn's much longer and more complex movements, because he's doing the same thing most of the time. Most of the time, not all the time. I mean, everything has its own unique shape, but quite often what he'll do is shorten the recapitulation. And later, when he gets to his late works, the London symphonies, for example, or the Paris symphonies, one of the reasons we find that he shortens that recapitulation is so that he could write a fabulously long and involved and developmental coda. But here he's not there yet in this symphony. Here you just get that abridgment. And it's really very, very effective. So let's listen to the delicious exposition of this bold and brassy and proud, strutting, generalissimo type music. And then the recapitulation, where it's all just compressed right down to there's not a single wasted note. We have, again, the Austro-Hungarian Haydn Orchestra under Adam Fischer on Nimbus. And here you are. Fun. I mean, it's so interesting, I think. Maybe it's just me, but I think understanding how he does it and hearing it like that, where you get the whole shebang and then the whole enchilada, and then this really, really compressed recapitulation leading on to the end. It's such a wonderful way to understand what the process is. And then when you listen to the whole movement, you understand it. You think about, what it means expressively. how it feels, what it does for us. It's just amazing. And now I want you to hear the development section. Because one of the things about this first movement is it's schematically well organized. Every section has a pause. When I did the previous example, the exposition ends with dum bum, dum bum. It stops. And then the development section starts, and it plays along for a bit. It's as long as the exposition. It's about a minute and a bit. And then it stops, completely dead. It stops with a pause, and that recapitulation starts again. So you have a model example of sonata form that's really, really good. If you're curious or you're a little uncertain as to how sonata form works and where the exposition is and the development and the recapitulation, this is a great movement to listen to because it's all really, really clear. The development section emphasizes, you will hear, the three-note idea very, very successfully. It isolates it at the beginning based on the material from the first subject and the motion music, and then it moves directly to the second subject. That got stuck in my head. It really did. I'm sort of hung up on it. And it develops this notion of three repeated notes in various spots. So just listen to it and listen for things that do three repeated notes. It's very, very, very clear how it works. And it by the time it's over, you've got those things in your head. And that's all Haydn wants. That's all you need to have for the rest of the symphony. Because from now on, every time you hear repeated notes, you're going to say, aha! Yes, I first heard that in the first movement, whether you notice it or not consciously. So here's the development section. It's really a marvelously compressed and effective development of all the material we've heard so far. Here you go. So did you catch that? Did you catch this idea of three repeated notes eventually getting isolated as all of these ideas get worked out? So that's the first movement. It's only about 4.5 minutes long with the exposition repeat. If you do a second half repeat, of course, it's an extra couple of minutes. It's an extraordinarily direct and accommodating piece of music. Now, the slow movement is it's lovely. It's really it's got beautiful melodies and as usual with Haydn, fascinating material that he's working with. You don't get so much three repeated notes, although you do get the two-note yada, 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 yada thing that you heard at the end of the exposition in the first movement, but you get repeated notes. I mean, 5-note groups, long note groups, every possible shape of repeated note figuration you hear in the exposition, the first part of this movement. And as a result of that, it operates almost like a development all by itself of the 3-note motive, because 3 notes can hatch and turn into 6. They can amoeba-like become more. They multiply, and you find that this movement it has its own beautiful melodies, but somehow it's all related to what we just heard, especially that second subject of the first movement. So let me play you the exposition of the slow movement. It's exquisite music. It fascinates me that people think Haydn, didn't write tunes or he wasn't as. I mean, this music is on the one hand, just delightful, but on the other hand, it's just so damn interesting. in its textures and in its rhythms and shape and the way he keeps it consistently interesting. It's dynamics. I mean, there's some wonderful climaxes, and in the middle section, there's a really scary outburst. It's just phenomenal. So here is the slow movement, which is marked. What is this? Un poco adagio piuttosto andante, which is a little bit really slow, but sort of closer to a walking tempo, more like an andante. Here it is. So did you hear all the fun Haydn's having with repeated note figures in that swatch of music? It's really, really cool. And it's getting even cooler as we get to the minuet. The minuet is just an orgy of 3-note figures, only here, instead of at the end of the theme or as an accompaniment to something or whatever, they occur in the middle of the melody. It's the same thing, the whole minuet. It's nothing but repetitions of little motives with 3 repeated notes inside them. Here's the whole minuet. You don't need to have any more explanation than that. And if you thought that was obsessive, oh my God, the trio does even more. It's totally based on repeated 3-note figures here at the end of this little motive on which it's based. But wow, I mean, it just couldn't be any clearer. It's a delicious melody for violin and oboe. And just think, 3 repeated notes. So here it is. pretty straightforward, huh? I mean, it's funny, isn't it? That somehow, people tend to miss the obvious when it comes to these pieces. They're so busy working on strange theories of harmonic analysis or whatever else they're doing, or their minds are occupied with. They just don't see what's right in front of us and how wonderful it is, how delightful it is, and how much fun you can have with it. Now, the finale. Well, I'm not going to play you the beginning of the finale. In fact, I'm not going to play you, I don't think, the main theme of the finale at all. It has nothing to do with three repeated notes, which is really good because by this time, we're kind of three repeated noted out. We've had enough of them, haven't we? I mean, what is he going to do? Just write everything with, but there is a really turbulent, exciting, emotionally ambiguous development section, which features three repeated note figures all over the place. I mean, they're just all over the place. And I'm going to play you that big middle section because I want you to hear it, because that's the music. It's turbulent. It's really the most emotionally turbulent music in the whole symphony. And it exercises the ghost of these three repeated notes, more or less. Because after that, Haydn can roll on and conclude the symphony with, actually, it doesn't conclude with three repeated notes. The three repeated notes try to conclude the symphony. The ending is yum, 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 yum. So he's like, okay, there they are. But nope, they don't have the last word. It's just really very amusing if you've been following the way that figure has been treated throughout the symphony. But here he sort of gets it out of his system. It's a wonderful passage. And here it is. You ready? Go. So you see, the whole symphony actually winds up with its three repeated note obsession pretty well addressed, and it can simply triumphantly bash its way to the end. And if you listen to that music, you probably agree. It's not really piano music. I mean, it doesn't sound like if you played it on a piano, it would have the effect that it does on an orchestra. It needs the color, it needs the dynamics, it needs the rhythm. It has those really, it's a virtuoso use of the full orchestra. And so Haydn was probably right not to want to arrange it for the piano, but happily we have it in the full orchestra. And that is Haydn's 69th Symphony. As breezy and enjoyable a piece as anybody wrote in the classical period, and it's not lesser for being more surfacely enjoyable, more enjoyable on the surface, more immediately appealing. I think all of Haydn's symphonies are immediately appealing, but I just was reading the literature before I did this talk, and it just really surprised me just how badly people misjudge these pieces, especially the ones that are not difficult. And this is not. And good. Let's just enjoy its facility as much as we enjoy the quirky interestingness of things like number 64, Tempora Mutantur, and things like that. No. There's a place and a time for everything. And Haydn's genius encompassed all of the possibilities. That's the point. And after this, we're in the 70s. We're getting there. And number 70, by the way, is one of those absolutely amazing, strange, quirky intellectual and emotionally gripping pieces. It's really, it's quite astounding and hilariously funny too. But I'm giving too much away. We'll get there when we get to it. Keep on listening, friends. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and I'll see you next time at number 70.